Back here with David Graeber, just saying there's no limit to the amount of money that banks can make up. So one of the things that we've had in recent years is this thing called austerity.
Yeah, that's such a crock. I mean, it's outrageous, really, because one thing that a lot of people pointed out is there was no debate about this. It's not like, you know, we had these people talking on BBC, economists saying, well, some people say that austerity is the way to solve our problems, and other people say something else. What's true? You know, let's look at the debating theories on this. No. It was just like everybody suddenly agreed, we just got to cut the deficit. It's absurd because, in fact, austerity policies have almost never been proven to work. Basic philosophy underlying austerity is completely disproven at this point. Even the Bank of England admits that money is not a scarce quantity. Monetarist theories are wrong. In fact, reality is almost the opposite of the way monetarist theories describe it. If we did get rid of the deficit, it would be a disaster. Back in the 90s, actually, Clinton, you know, kind of wasn't in on the game. He kind of believed the rhetoric, tried to balance the American budget. And Alan Greenspan, as the head of the Federal Reserve, got really upset. And, you know, ostensibly said, well, we can't have a surplus. I mean, if there's a surplus, there's going to be billions and billions of dollars, and the government's going to, like, start buying stuff up, you know, because they're the government. They're going to buy stuff people want. And before you know it, we're going to have socialized medicine, socialized oil industry. It's going to be communism. But really, you know, what he was thinking was, well, you know, if actually the way it really works is if the government doesn't borrow money, there's no money, there's a depression. So we got to get a deficit back. So as soon as Clinton was gone, Bush said big tax cuts, and they restore the deficit.
So we've got the rich, they don't pay tax.
No. I mean,
Amazon, Vodafone, yeah. Apple, Google. There's this case where Vodafone made a load of money by selling a company in America. Yeah. UK Uncut have been going on about it. They say, you owe us £8 billion, like from that deal that you just done. But they're saying, no, we're doing most of our business in Luxembourg. Yeah. That's where we're based.
Yeah, no, the whole thing is completely insane. I mean, rich people, basically at this point, they're subsidized by the government. It's not even that they're not paying money to the government. Pretty much the entire operation of these corporations is made possible by the government. They are giving money to the government, they're just giving it directly to politicians. This is what they're doing. They're not giving it to the public funds. They're funding political campaigns, and as a result of that, they get the government to write regulations that gets them to extract more money. That's the way the economy basically works now.
Wow. Because we've got these media barons, haven't we?
Yeah.
In England, in the UK, we've got the Barclay brothers, Viscount Rothmere, Desmond, and Rupert Murdoch. So they basically propaganda. So they're always attacking the poor, and they're attacking, you know, this is how they control. Look at these people over here.
Yeah, and the double standard is incredible. I mean, you're supposed to feel bad because, you know, you welch on a debt or you cheat on your benefits. And, you know, the guys who are saying this are doing 100 times more. It's just explicit, like with the debts, you know. They could have bailed out the banks by bailing out mortgage holders. Banks owed all this money because they basically made irresponsible loans. Suddenly they were broke. They were in debt. They could have just given the money to people with mortgages, and the people with mortgages would have get mortgages underwater, stuff like that, stuck with bad loans. If they'd given the money to the mortgage holders would have given it to the banks and indirectly bailed out the banks. And they had a decision about that. They could have done that, or they could just give the money directly to the banks. And every country except Iceland decided to give it directly to the banks and let the mortgage holders go screw themselves. Now, what's the logic of that? The only logic is just morality play. You know, it's like constantly telling poor people that they've done something wrong. And it strikes me that that's a large part of what government does nowadays. Like every major industrialized every rich country basically employs hundreds of thousands of people whose main job is to come up with ways to make poor people feel bad about themselves. Some of them work in the media, some of them work in offices. They're like social services people denying you your benefits, people auditing you, people locking you up. But basically there's this huge force of morality constantly directed against the most vulnerable people in society, and nothing at all on the rich.
Well, I mean, one of the things that it's about scapegoating. It's about transference of evil, isn't it? It's about saying it's your fault. It's not our fault.
Yeah, because everybody knows there's something terribly wrong. And to some degree, it's just like, who can I get mad at? I'd like to get mad at rich people, but I can't. But they'll say, well, we'll let you get mad at immigrants.
Yeah, but the people, the actual people, like you take the guy, the Barclay brothers, they own the iconic, I was saying this morning, Ritz Hotel. You know, it's bigger than the Dorchester, it's bigger than, you know, it's the #1 hotel. You have tea at the Ritz. 17 years, it's paid no tax. It earns, you know, they're billionaires. Yet they took 200 million from HSBC on a loan, and their chief, Peter Oborne, chief political writer, left because he wasn't allowed to attack HSBC. You've just been in Syria. How was Syria?
Oh man, that was amazing. Yeah, I was there early December actually. It was a real revolution. I mean, it was everywhere I went, everybody said the same thing. It's like, but we're having a revolution. Like, why is nobody else here? Why is everybody not here? This is, it was completely amazing to see a country where people had basically the ruling class ran away. In this one part of Syria I was in, I should explain, I was in a place called Rojava, which comprises the 3 cantons, which are majority Kurdish: Afrin, Kobane, and Jazeera. I was in Jazeera. Jazeera is kind of the big breadbasket of Syria. It's where all the wheat and a lot of the oil was. Of course, they can't export oil now because they're under total embargo. And people in the neighborhood really, really don't like the idea of a popular democratic revolution. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to create sort of bottom-up democracy, very much inspired by the ideas of an anarchist thinker named Murray Bookchin. Democratic confederalism is the term they use, but they got their own version of it. And the idea is that every neighborhood group will have a little assembly which operates by direct democracy. Everybody gets together and votes and things, reaches consensus on difficult issues, and then they sort of delegate. So each one sends delegates to a slightly larger council, and these guys aren't representatives. They kind of go back and confer and go back up again. Those delegate again, confederate on a municipal level. So you have this kind of bottom-up democratic system, and they pay out special attention to patriarchy, because, you know, this is the Middle East, is like the big enemy is sort of patriarchal institutions. So what they've decided to do, actually, the way people told me about it, they would say, well, we're anti-capitalist, but we think other anti-capitalist movements have gone about this backwards. They said, well, you know, first we get rid of capitalism, then we can worry about the state. And then when we worry about the state, we'll worry about stuff like patriarchy, social relations, so forth and so on. And they said, well, that never worked. People try that over and over again. We're going to do it the other way around. We're going to have women's liberation first, because you can't get rid of capitalism unless you get rid of the state, and you can't get rid of the state unless you get rid of patriarchy. So every assembly, first of all, it has to be at least 40% women to have a quorum, but it's also matched by an all-women's council that can veto anything they do.
There's an all-women's council?
All-women's council on every level. So whether you have a medical, you know, sort of education committee, whatever it is, there's always a women's one too.
Is this Syria or is it Kurdistan?
It's kind of both. I mean, they want... See, it used to be... Basically, these guys are PKK, I should explain. They're affiliated with the PKK, same ideology. There's pictures of Öcalan, sort of their PKK sort of ideological leader kind of guy.
Who's in prison.
He's in prison. They have this special prison just for him they built in the Sea of Marmara, in this island. But he still gets to write stuff. And he's written a whole series of books about democratic confederalism, about the history of the Middle East, and he's kind of their inspiration. And it's kind of creepy at first, because you go around and there's like pictures of this one guy everywhere, and it's like, oh, charismatic leadership. That's not that great. But then you realize the guy's in prison. You know, he can't really give orders anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And most of the pictures you see on the walls are people who are dead or martyrs. But then there's the one guy who's just sort of like still here, but he's seen as this person who sort of voluntarily accepted prison. And, to stop a war. That's what they all say about it. Anyway, so, and he's decided, this is actually kind of kooky but great, I really love it. He's decided that the Kurds are the descendants of the sort of original Neolithic goddess-worshipping peoples of the Middle East from before the Semites came in, the Sumerians and then the Semites. And they need to go back to the Neolithic, the values of the Neolithic. So, for example, the Women's Association is named after the goddess Ishtar.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ekaterina Star. They have this big star on their flag for the goddess Ishtar. And they have women's militias.
They're such a cool... you know, they're out there. They're fighting ISIS.
I know, that's what's so amazing. I mean, people see this and it doesn't quite get through. You know, you see all these women with these stars and the machine guns, and they're fighting in the streets, and everybody's like, "Oh, I guess that must be some kind of Kurdish tradition to have women soldiers or something." I guess. And no, they're revolutionaries. I mean, they're actually trying to destroy patriarchy, and the first thing what you got to do if you destroy patriarchy is make sure women have equal access to guns. Again, I'll just totally tell you that.